The causes and consequences of colonialism. Let's discuss the causes first. The first cause of colonialism was Industrial Revolution. Colonialism was a result of Industrial Revolution. Production increased enormously because of the new machines. However, the rate of local consumption was much lesser compared to the surplus rate of production. Hence, the immediate need of the Europeans was to find new marketplaces for selling their products. It was also necessary for those marketplaces to be dependable and easy to dominate. The second cause of colonialism was requirements of raw material. It is necessary to maintain low costs of production compared to competing nations in the market. The desire to create monopoly in the market and the need to procure raw material at cheaper rates were two major factors which made it essential for the European nations to establish clear supremacy. Investing surplus capital was the third cause of colonialism. The Industrial Revolution added to the wealth of the European capitalists who were already rich. They started searching for secure markets to invest their surplus funds. The markets in the less developed countries were quite secure from this point of view. Thus, the availability of surplus capital facilitated the rise of colonialism. Sources of minerals. The countries in Asia and Africa had rich sources of minerals like gold, diamonds, silver, and coal, etc. This attracted the European merchants to various regions of Asia and Africa. The next cause of colonialism was geographic importance. European nations had realized that the geographic location of some regions in Asia and Africa are advantageous for trade. Malta, Gibraltar, Aden, Singapore, Andaman and Nicobar were some such regions where the British established their hold. Availability of labor. Another cause of colonialism. European merchants needed large number of laborers at very cheap rate. The colonies fulfilled this need. This later contributed to the boom in the slave trade. The last cause of colonialism was the feeling of racial superiority. The European colonists claimed it to be their responsibility to civilize the people in Asia and Africa. This assumed the role of the Europeans resulted in the conversion of many Asian and African people to Christianity. This also helped the growth of colonialism. Moving on to the consequences. People in Asia and Africa were economically exploited by the Europeans. The people in the colonies lost their independence. The economic exploitation pushed them into poverty. At the same time, some constructive things happened during the colonial period. A new awareness emerged in the political, social, economic, and educational fields. Common people became conscious of democratic systems and its inherent modern values like liberty, equality, and fraternity. They got introduced to the principles like administration based on a fundamental legal system, judicial system, availability of education to all. People became aware of the need to shoulder the responsibility of solving their problems, which eventually led to the independence movements in many colonies. The next two slides talk about the American Revolution timeline. Portugal and Spain were on the forefront of the competition among the European nations to establish colonies in America. Portugal brought Brazil in the American continent under their rule, and so did Spain by taking hold of Mexico. There, they discovered gold mines. Spanish colonizers brought slaves from Africa to cultivate sugarcane and tobacco in the American fields. However, once the Spanish discovered the mines of gold and silver, they concentrated more on mining the precious metals than agriculture. They established control over the entire coastline of South America. The coastal region from Florida to California was held by the Spanish. Witnessing Spain's prosperity, England, Holland, and France also began to establish their colonies in America. During the reign of Elizabeth I, the Queen of England, explorers were encouraged to undertake sea expeditions. Establishing colonies was the prime intention. In 1496, John Abbott was granted permission to establish colonies on the American land. He established the British as the ruling authority in North America. In 1607, the British built Jamestown, a colony on the banks of the river James. Later, the same colony was renamed as Virginia. Afterwards, England established its colonies in the coastal regions of North America, stretching from New England to Carolina. Along with earning commercial benefit, welfare of the home country was added to the colonial intentions during the reign of Queen Elizabeth. To suit its colonial interests, England began to impose restrictions on the colonies. The Maritime Law was a step in this direction. This law authorized only the British companies for sea transport. The Stamp Act of 1765 made it compulsory to purchase special stamps for important documents like wills, deeds, newspapers, pamphlets. These acts were termed as Intolerable Acts. British colonies in America like Virginia and Massachusetts put up resistance against the Stamp Act and also other restrictions imposed on the colonies. On 5th March 1770, some people were shot down by the British soldiers in Boston, a port city in Massachusetts. The British Parliament had granted monopoly to the East India Company to import and sell tea to the colonies. To continue with the timeline, people in the colonies had started demanding removal of restrictions imposed on them and autonomy. When the British government refused to yield to these demands, the American colonies declared boycott on British goods. In 1773, as an act of resistance, the local residents of Boston dumped the boxes containing tea in the sea belonging to the East India Company. This event is known as the Boston Tea Party. A federation of colonies known as the Continental Congress was established. In 1774, a meeting of the Congress was called. In this meeting, known as the First Continental Congress, a strong opposition was expressed to the import of British goods. It was also decided to boycott British goods. The 13 colonies in America came together and declared independence from Great Britain. The 13 colonies being New Hampshire, New York, Massachusetts, Connecticut, Rhode Island, Pennsylvania, New Jersey, Delaware, Virginia, North Carolina, South Carolina, and Georgia. On 4th July, in the meeting known as the Second Continental Congress, a document known as the Declaration of Independence was adopted. This document was drafted by Thomas Jefferson. The crucial point of the document announced that the 13 American colonies were independent sovereign states. The key point of this document is the statement about 3 basic human rights, namely life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness. It was stated that these 3 are the natural rights of all humans which nobody can be deprived of. The conflict between the colonies and the British Army continued for some time, resulting into several battles after the colonies declared independence. Finally, at Saratoga, the colonies got a decisive victory over the British Army. This victory proved to be a turning point for the colonies as the French agreed to support them in their conflict with the British. Eventually, Spain also joined the colonies in their struggle for independence. On 7th October 1780, George Washington defeated the British Army. On 19th October, the British General Lord Cornwallis surrendered and America became independent. The American Revolt for Independence is known as the American Revolution. The Americans proved to the world that the subjects have a right to fight the rulers who deny them their natural rights. It is said that state without a king is a phenomenon which is a gift to the world from America. Canada, a country adjacent to America, was acquired by the British by the Paris Treaty. Later, the British accorded the status of a federal state to Canada and established a bicameral parliament. To protect their colonies in India from other colonialist European nations and to boost their trade in India and the neighboring regions, the British began to acquire colonies in Asia. The next few slides explain how the British occupied Nepal, Tibet, Bhutan, Sikkim, and Myanmar. European travelers reached Africa also. However, the African territory with its dense forests, widespread lakes, swamps, and deserts was unfamiliar to them. In 1884, a conference of European nations was organized in Berlin to explore the opportunities in Africa available to them. The true purpose of this conference was to discuss the possibilities of dividing the African territory amongst themselves. This slide explains how the European nations got colonies in Africa.